Howdy folks, I just thought that I would check in with a little update for a project I've been working on, which is possibly the saddest thing I've ever built in my entire life, but also it's just a lot of fun. It's very as the youths would say today, it's very coded, and it's very coded for the 40s, i.e. my 40s, not the 40s. I hit 40 and then an incredible thing happened. I discovered that birds exist and became deeply interested in birds, spotting them, hearing them, thinking about them. I've just genuinely started to enjoy birds. I feel deeply uncomfortable saying the word bird watching. I think that has a lot of connotations. It has a lot of things which come with baggage. I don't consider myself a bird watcher, but I do watch birds and I do listen for them. And it all started with a YouTube documentary, which was around a concept called listing, which is the idea that you take a year and you go completely mental and you just travel around and you try and get the most birds you possibly can in a year. And basically it was these two lads. I'll drop a link to it in the description because I can't remember what it was called now, possibly called listers. But they went around the world. Well, they went around America for a year in a van, and they were just like, let's try and break the record for how many birds we can list in a year. And I discovered that they use this app called eBird. Oh, that was a risky Google search to put in on a video. eBird. And what eBird does is it allows you to make a list of the birds that you have seen. And eBird also uses something called Merlin bird ID. This bad boy here. And if you're even remotely interested, if you say you're 38, 39 and you're starting to feel that 40's creeping up on you and you're starting to realise that you're unsettled and there's a little bit of an itch going on somewhere in the back of your mind, it's probably that you want to start bird watching. And I highly recommend these two apps, eBird and Merlin. eBird is about making your list. Merlin is about identifying the birds, and you can identify them via asking questions. But the coolest thing about it, and the thing that really shook me, it amazed me, was Sound ID, which uses a open source project. Let's get another tab open. They're called BirdNET, not NerdNet. And it says AI, but please stay tuned in. What it is a neural net. So this is, what we called AI before. We called everything AI. It uses a little neural network described here to identify the bird calls, and it helps you then build out your list in eBird. Now, I've just got back from Mallorca, where I spent a week sitting on a sunbed reading a book. You probably can't tell from the feed because my camera's in black and white, but I'm not tanned. I sat in the shade. Used this app an incredible amount while sitting on my sunbed, just identifying all the odd birds that I was hearing. And it was great fun. And it elevated my desire to log birds. So I've started making a list. I'm not doing the whole like crazy listing thing because I have a job. I have to be here. But it did make me realize how good audio detection was for bird calls, which shocked me, especially considering I was running it on my phone, sitting on a sunbed, and obviously there's people talking around you, there's wind blowing, it's not like some high-end setup for, audio recording. It was just literally me sat, Kindle in one hand, phone in the other, and it's picking up these bird calls. Now, this then led me down, as I do, I wanted to know how this worked. I discovered that BirdNET is actually open source. BirdNET is a open source AI toolkit for identifying birds. Can't be used for commercial purposes, but it can be used for personal projects. So with an abundance of free time, which is what happens when you're on holiday, I started sketching out an idea, and the idea was to build a super low power audio recorder that can sit in my garden and listen in batches, because I want it to be low power, and build audio recordings and then send them to my central server, so then I can analyze the bird call. I can't believe I'm saying these sentences out loud on the internet. I'll never live this down. Analyze the bird call and build a database and an identification platform that I can use that tells me what the activity is in my garden. So I did it. And this is it here. And it is called BirdDecks. I think the idea came from, I think bird watching might well be midlife crisis in my generation, which played Pokemon as a child. You start at your midlife crisis point, and I'm starting to wish I was a child again. And so I'm craving for comfort things such as the Pokedex from playing Pokemon as a child. Anyway, so all I want to do, and that's been a really long way of setting up, 6 minutes worth almost, of me setting up saying, I want to show you this thing I've built, because I think it's pretty cool. And it's pretty fun. And this here is the web UI for my tool called BirdDex. And as you can see here, it's got a little section at the top, how many species have been catalogued, how many of those species I've seen, because I am not adding species to my list that I have not seen, but has only been identified by audio. I don't count those as a list. How many detections there's been, how many has been today, and how many total I have processed. Now, the way this works is I've built a ESP32, which is just a microcontroller, but it's a really good microcontroller because certain versions of it have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. But one of the best things about it is it has a deep sleep mode. And what that deep sleep mode does is it lets you command it to shut down and sit in a deep sleep for however long you want your script to sit in deep sleep for, and consume basically no power, or a very, very low amount of power. And then wake up and execute your code and then do the same again. And what this means is, because what I wanted this to be was low power that required very little hands-on myself, this ESP32 chip with a microphone, obviously to listen, with a battery, an 18650 at the moment, but I may switch to a LiPo, I'm not sure yet. I hear LiPos aren't that great in cold temperatures, and I'm in Britain, so possibly not do that. A solar panel to charge, well, to trickle charge the system, and an SD card reader to store information. And essentially what the system does is every hour it wakes up and it records 2 minutes, and then it goes into deep sleep. And, before it goes into deep sleep, it then saves the audio file, FTP pushes it to a server, and then my server runs BirdDex. And this is what we see here on screen, which effectively then processes this data. So the audio recorder really is just a dumb audio recorder and an FTP pusher. It's actually been more complicated than I thought it was going to be, but I'm no expert with the ESP32 stuff, so it's a little bit of a baby's first project, but it's come together pretty good. I think eventually I'll make a full custom PCB for it to learn that as well, but for now I'm just using components wired into a proto board. A proto board like this, which is quite a nice proto board, but it's big and I can make it small. And I would really, really like to design a full custom PCB with the ESP32 on it. So effectively what BirdDex does is, after the recorder is recorded and is pushed to the FTP, I press sync from recorder, and it pulls from the FTP the recordings which have not been synced into BirdDex. And each of these boxes here is indeed what you think it is. It is a recording. Chirp 184.wav. So to analyze it, I click on it, and there was nothing in that one because it just did nothing. Nothing in that one, nothing was identified. This one had a Eurasian blackbird. Now, this UI was designed to enact the feelings of opening Pokemon cards, so I tried to make them like cards. I think I actually want to take the whole aesthetic a little further, but I'm still in the getting the functionality going thing. So it essentially tells me how many times I've heard this. I've heard it 12 times. It gives me the name. It gives me the Latin name, which is fantastic because this is the best Latin name ever in birds. I shouldn't say that because I know about 6. Turdus merula. A Wikipedia link if you want to learn more about said bird, which obviously you do. You're watching this video. I can then listen. I don't know if this will come through on the. I don't know if I have the desktop audio on. No, I don't have the desktop audio routed to the recording, but you can then listen to the call. But we'll get into that in a bit. I can mark if I've seen it. Now I have already seen this bird, so I will click it. And what that is doing is it's not saying I've seen this particular instance. It's saying I've seen this species in my garden, and I have seen it in and around the time that this audio recording is. So I just then press done. Now you can keep going through. Let's do a few more. Let's open a few more packs together. This is like the nerdiest 40s version of pack opening. You just need to be like screaming when like a rock pigeon comes up, I can get on my chair and start jumping around like high show speed. So we now have a Eurasian collared dove. So this actually should be when I should start jumping up, because it's a beautiful bird. The Streptioplea deca octo. Do you know they did Latin at my school? You wouldn't think it would. Not that I did it. It wasn't allowed. Wikipedia page again. So yeah, and if because it's not perfect, if it identifies something like the great condor, as exciting as that would be to see in my garden, I'd be like, that's probably not. And actually, to be honest, it's quite funny. Sometimes you do the listen and you're like, yeah, that's me opening the back door. You could press wrong to be like, it's not that, and that would just get rid of it. But I know this is something that I do see. So you could go through each individual one like that, or you can just press process all and it'll process them all, which is what you would expect from a button that is called process all. But what this will do is if there's any new species when you press process all, it will highlight them, any new spottings. So fingers crossed, because I suppose this is actually really the pack opening. This is the have I seen anything new? And there was not. So it didn't reveal anything. Now, that doesn't mean it didn't hear anything. It's basically saying this, when you're doing the bulk process, it's me going, I can't be bothered to do these one by one. And it does log them all, but it only pops a card if it's like, wow, you've not seen this one before. Do you want to check this out? But there was nothing there. But anyway, that takes us on to the next bit of it, which is the Birdie Decks, which is up here, which has a number next to it, which indicates how many birds you have in what your Birdie Decks. And you can see here what has been heard in and around my garden. Now, I live in the northeast of England. These are very normal birds. What I will say is I was quite excited to have these two, because I've never seen a goldfinch, and it's been heard multiple times. So it's in and around there. The hunt is on, so to speak. But I haven't marked that as seen. You can see the little gold icons there indicate seen. But I've not seen it, so I've not marked it as seen and not added it to my list. But it tells me to keep an eye out for both the European greenfinch and the European goldfinch. I've just realised I've not marked the common wood pigeon as seen, which I have seen because they live under my solar panels on the roof. But yeah, so you can go through all of these. Now, one of the really cool things that we've done here is the Eurasian magpie. Let's just pick this because it's the one I see the most. They're actually nesting in my garden, and they are highly aggressive at the moment towards my cat, which is just wonderful. It's like living next to a machine gun going off 24/7. You can come in here to the recent detections, and it tells you all the files that are in, and you can pull up all the old ones. You can press this little button here, and what it does actually gives you the spectrogram. And it actually highlights the section of the spectrogram where it's identified the call, and then if you press this button, it will play the call. I can hear it in my headphones, but I don't believe that's coming through. But it's quite, it's, you know, I want to say it's fun. No, it is fun. Don't judge me. And also, Pika Pika, when we're on the issue of Pokemon, who would have thought that was the Latin name for the Eurasian magpie? Pika Pika. That is the crux of the Birdie Decks itself, but it does get a little sadder. So there is the log, which logs every single detection and when it's happened, along with a confidence score that BirdNET has given back for its identification. You can also listen to the call. There's a calendar which tells me what species were detected on what days. Sometimes when you present things, you start to realise how ridiculous they are. But this is my hole and I've chose to dig it. And then next is stats. Now, stats screen's not finished, but this is actually weirdly the screen I'm most excited about. I used to be a data analyst. I like stuff like this. But this gives us a statistical breakdown of the top species based on the number of detections. And a detection event is, so say if there's a recording and a magpie calls 4 times in that recording, it does not count that as 4, it counts that as 1 detection. This was something that I realised early on. I was getting really heavily swayed in certain ways, and it was counting each call as a detection. Whereas I'm just saying, well, I'm only recording 2 minutes. It's heard in there, just count it as a detection. This gives us the bar chart of every type of species that is seen and how many times it's been seen. The detections per day. You can see they've been declining. Can you tell which day I was doing tests that didn't involve a timer and deep sleep? The activity by the time of day. I'm actually, obviously 7 o'clock doesn't surprise me. That starts to be when they start chirping, but I would have thought a little bit more peak around here, but not to be. This species discovery timeline is not working. That's not functional at the moment. And the confidence distribution. So this is just basically saying how confident is the thing for all of its detections. I'm going to get rid of that. That's not really to do with bird stats. I'm trying to think of some more ideas. And if you've got any ideas for stuff that would be cool to log in the stat screen, leave it in the comments, because this is like the first pass at this. And basically all I've done is I've taken the table that the database that stores the bird calls in, and I've just spat the data out into pivots. So, I mean, this is confident distributions of no real, I don't care. There's lots of space here for more. So honestly, if you've got any ideas for things that we could show on the statistics screen, please let me know. Doesn't mean I'll be able to do it, but I can certainly give it a go. Setting screen, basically you can set your latitude and longitude. That's actually wrong, because BirdNET brings your latitude and longitude in on its detection algorithm. So when I said earlier, you know, if it says, oh, there's a great condor, you're not going to get a great condor, because it's going to go, that's not going to be where you are. Well, I think actually it could do it, but it would only do it if it was like 99% or something confident. But you can change all of the confidence scaling and everything in the BirdNet API. And I've done a little bit of that here, so it won't even count it as logged if it's under 35%. See, I have a fence which is squeaking a little bit at the moment, and initially when I first did it, I realised that squeak was sometimes getting picked up as a bird call. So I changed the confidence, and now you don't ever get them. Some themes, which I'll show. You can just press this button up here as well. So there's like a light theme. This is called field notes, which is meant to be a bit naughty. I did do a paper texture, but the paper texture doesn't work, so I'll have to have another look at that. And a dark one, but I just like this light one. That's another thing that happened as I turned 40. I've decided I hate dark mode and everything, so it's amazing. God knows what'll happen when I'm 50. And then finally is the credit screen, just so every bit of software I've used in making this stack can be credited. Yeah, so there's just this one other thing that I wanted to show. Yeah, so essentially this is a system architecture flowchart, and this was just generated by Claude. I just asked Claude to take a look at the project and just put a flow chart just so you can see each of the steps and where things flow as they are like going through in the APIs that are called and things. I wanted to include this because essentially people will ask, and if it's on the screen, you can have a little look at it. You can pause, you can just have a look, but this is all Claude generated, so I didn't actually make this myself. I don't think it's wrong. I mean, looking at it, it seems fine, but there we are. It's there if you want to look at it. So anyway, that's my little update video, my little video to show off what I'm calling BirdDecks. I was going to actually call it Birdie Decks, and I think I actually did call it Birdie Decks and have mistyped that there, but whatever. I think it's fun. It's really sad, but you know what? Live your life. If you find joy in things, chase them. If you find joy in things, just go after them, because what the hell's the point of being here if we're not invested in enjoying the things that we enjoy in life? So I like looking at birds. I think this is really interesting for me personally, and I just wanted to share it. I think once it's done, I might put this up to GitHub so other people can give it a go. It can't be used for commercial use in any way, shape or form because it uses BirdNET, and BirdNET explicitly forbid that, and that's totally fine. Completely understand that. I think it's a nice front end. I think BirdNET do actually have a thing which does a similar thing to this that runs on a Raspberry Pi. I discovered that after I'd started building this. But when I looked at it, I was like, it doesn't really do what I want because it's not fully low power and passive and sits in the garden by itself. It would need a bit more power and would need recharge, would need plugging into mains. And I was just like, it looks pretty cool, but it wasn't really what I wanted. So I still think this has a use. Yeah, I hope you've all found that very interesting. As interesting as I have. Might be a stretch, but it is interesting. So thank you very much for watching. And I'll be live streaming some stuff next week, including designing the casing for this, because I need to design a casing which mounts both the solar panel and the board. But I've not started designing that yet because I still haven't really finalised the board. I don't know if I want to do custom PCB or whether I'm just going to leave it on a ESP32 Proto board and etc. One last thing, if you are interested in the stuff I do, this is me at Maker World. I design a model a day. I have done for nearly 2 years now. If you are want to check out the models, you can. I'm Abstractly Design on MakerWorld. And if you are the type of person that does 3D printing and has Etsy stores and stuff for selling 3D printing, all of these can be commercially licensed under a single monthly payment. So go check it out. And that is my way of saying this video is sponsored by me, because I have 560 subscribers. Right. Thank you very much, and I will see you next time.